The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good morning everyone. This is Phil Driver speaking, your presenter for this morning. Welcome along to this sales presentation for GoConnect for Panasonic. A sales presentation for version 2.5. We've just released a new version of the product back in December last year. So we've updated our sales presentation with lots of new information about the new version. So essentially we've got two audiences with us this morning, either people that are completely unfamiliar with the product, in which case you're going to see the whole product, the full sales presentation. But we've also got people that are familiar with the product, but they just want to know what's new in the new version. So we've kind of incorporated all the new bits in the flow of the presentation. So regardless of what you're sort of looking for today, hopefully the presentation will satisfy your requirements. It's going to take us approximately 1 hour to go through. It's quite a long presentation, but hopefully you'll find it a useful use of an hour of your time. We're going to do lots of live demonstrations, so I'm not going to batter you to death with PowerPoint presentations. We've got lots of PowerPoint slides. We're going to be including a live demonstration for you as well. Before we get started, though, just a quick point. We've got a lot of people online this morning, so unfortunately it's not really practical to have live sort of questions and answers, unfortunately. But we don't want to discourage you from asking questions. So the way you do that is open up your little webinar control panel and open up the questions section. You might have to just click it to open it up. And then you can type whatever questions that you have in there. Obviously, I'm on my own today. I haven't got a wingman with me, so I can't answer those questions on the fly. I can't interrupt the presentation. But what we'll do is at the end of the webinar, we have your email address, because you provided that when you registered for the webinar, so we can respond to whatever questions you've asked in that questions panel after the webinar. We close the webinar down, and then we can answer your questions via a return of email. We will actually leave the webinar open for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of the webinar, so that if you've got any questions at the end, you can put them in at the very end. Obviously, you can do them as we go along, but you might find that your questions get answered as we work through the presentation. So either ask them now or ask them as we go through the actual presentation. So before we get started on the actual product, just a couple of quick words about who we are. Mondigo, based in Peterborough in the UK, been around for over a decade now, sold over 3 million desktop licenses, so a fair number of users using the product. And we specialize in CTI. That's what we do, that's what we're good at. And we work with various communication partners, including Panasonic. And we also work with third-party application vendors for the integration side of things. We're actually a Panasonic Silver partner, and we've basically got a proven expertise in the integration of Panasonic phone systems with software applications. Hopefully, I'm going to show that to you today if you're not familiar with the product already. GoConnect for Panasonic is one of our prime products. It's a multi-platform product. What we mean by that is that there's various clients available for the product. So we've got a PC version, a Mac version, and also a mobile version as well. So that's what we mean by the multi-platform. And essentially it's designed to help your customers get the very best from their phone system. So users can control their handset from their computer, so they don't have to pick up the handset anymore, do anything manually. And they can also integrate any applications that they may have available to them, contact-specific applications where they might contain contact addresses, contact phone numbers, etc., and integrate that into the use of the phone system as well. Lots of words there, but I'll show you a demo, and hopefully it'll all make a lot of sense. But we don't get too technical on this presentation, but just a quick diagram just to show you how everything kind of hangs together. You have your phone system already installed with the extensions hanging off of it. Each user using one of those extensions, we assume, has a computer of some sort. It might be a Mac or a PC. So we install the GoConnect client on those users' desktops. Those clients attached to a GoConnect server, which is itself attached to the phone system over CSTA. And then we also have the mobile side of things as well, and those mobile apps connect into the GoConnect server. So you've got various clients in various places with client application running on their device, and they connect into the GoConnect server, which then talks to the phone system. So essentially this slide is to say that you don't change the setup of the phone system anyway. There's no sort of change in the way the exchange is used, the extension is used, etc. It's all pretty standard stuff, and everything is run through the apps and the clients that run on the user's PC. So very easy to implement is really the bottom line on that one. I could throw a load of benefit slides at you. I'm not going to do that, just a couple of benefits just to get the ball rolling. What you're going to see hopefully from this live demonstration is that what GoConnect will do for your clients is help improve and provide a more professional and intelligent handling of their incoming calls. If you have a customer that takes a lot of inbound calls, maybe it's a call center, for example, then I'm going to show you how that can be significantly improved. If you have a customer that does lots of outbound calling, a call center in the other way, sort of sales-based environment, then there's lots of features there that's going to speed up that outbound dialing process, and that could obviously have cost implications to that particular customer. And one of the more sort of generic features is the ability for the individual users of the product to improve the way that they collaborate with each other. So it's going to help the users in that particular client environment talk to each other better, collaborate with each other better, etc. So I say lots of words, but I'm going to give you a demonstration to show you how that actually works. Quick summary on what's new in 2.5. We're going to go through each one of these as we work through the flow of the presentations. If you are familiar with the product, you'll see these popping up, and there'll be little yellow post-its saying new in version 2.5. I've put this slide here really just to show you how busy we've been over the last few months in terms of putting lots of new features into the product. So we're not standing still in any way. Lots of new stuff. Most of these features come from requests from particular users, resellers, etc., distributors. So a lot of the way the product is driven is user requests. So we'll see these as we go through the presentation. So we're going to start off with the PC client. First thing to mention is there is a new PC client. So if you're familiar with the product, something to take on board. That's the Office Plus version, which is new in 2.5, and that sits between the existing Office and CRM versions. And what you'll find is that some of the new features, my third bullet here, some of the new features in 2.5 are available in all three of the clients, but some of them are exclusive to the new Office Plus and also CRM, which has all of the stuff that's in Office Plus as well. So things like preferred device, the combined screen on presence, the all device preview. I'm going to show you all these things a bit later on. Some of those features are only available in the new Office Plus client and also in CRM as well. They're not available in the base client. That's not to sort of downgrade the base client in any way. I'm actually going to be using that client to demonstrate the product to you today. So all the core functionality is still in that base client, including integration with Outlook, Lotus Notes, and Google Contacts, and also some national directories as well. So there's lots of functionality in that base client still. The CRM version is the one that's got all the integration in it, which we'll look at a little bit later on. So I'm going to give you a live demonstration now. I'm going to show you the basic core functionality first of all. If you're already familiar with the product, apologies that I'm going to show you lots of things that you already know, but as we do have people on that are actually not familiar with the product at all, we're going to sort of just set the ground and show you what the product can do in general, and then I'm going to switch and have a look at some of the new things they're doing in version 2.5. So this is just a base demo. This is how you would present this to a prospective customer, how you would explain to them what the product is all about. So I'm actually running on a demonstration system, just to make this absolutely clear. I'm actually sitting at home right now on a laptop. I'm not attached to a phone system, but I'm running our GoConnect demonstration client, which allows me to show you and anybody else how the product actually works. You wouldn't believe that I wasn't actually connected to a phone system the way the demo actually works. So every time I'm doing dialing and receiving calls, just imagine that there's a phone sitting on my desk and I'm actually sort of receiving and making calls on that particular phone. So I've got my GoConnect client actually installed and running on my laptop. So if I right click on it, it brings up what's known as the system menu, or the system tray menu. This is one of the interfaces into the product, not the prettiest one, but it's one of the interfaces into the product. First thing we're going to show you is actually the address book. A bit of a strange place to start, but the reason I show you this is just to explain that if you have a customer, we make a lot of noise about the CRM integration within the product, and rightfully so. But you may have some customers that just don't have a CRM at the moment. They're a fairly small customer. Perhaps they've got a server somewhere with an Excel spreadsheet on it, something like that, with customer names and addresses in, or even a basic access database, something like that. But they don't necessarily have a really formal way of storing their contact information. If that's the case, then they'll be interested in the shared address book, which is part of the base GoConnect product. So all customers have this available to them, and then all users using GoConnect can have access to this address book. It's quite nice because you can have sort of searching in here, so I can search on a phone number, so 01480 for example brings up a list of matches, or I can search on a company name as well, so I can search for Abbey and it'll bring up any companies with the word Abbey in the name. If I open one of them up, then you can see it's a basic contact record. It's not supposed to sort of compete with Dynamics CRM in any way, but there's enough there for a small client that just wants to restore or record information about their contacts, names and phone numbers, etc. You can even put little sort of contact notes in there as well. So, fairly basic, but it kind of does the job. The reason I'm showing you that at the moment is that, let's say we've got Abbey Produce. What I'm actually going to do is I'm not going to dial Abbey Produce. I'm going to use a little trick that you can use on the demonstration. If you put an asterisk in front of a phone number, it actually makes it an incoming call rather than outgoing call. So if I put in put in the right phone number, 01733 200 900. So that's the phone number for Abbey. I'm just going to sort of show you what happens on an incoming call. So there it is. The phone number's come in. It's done a match on that phone number, and it's matched it against a record in my address book. The reason I'm showing you this now is this is exactly the same as the integration. This could be Dynamics CRM. It could be ACT. It could be one of the other packages that we integrate into. All we're doing is we're doing a lookup on the phone number into the integrated applications that we've got set up, and if we can find it, we'll give you the caller ID. So I haven't actually answered the phone at the moment. If I just close that down, and imagine I've just got a phone call coming in, I've got the information that I kind of need. If I need more, I can pop the little contact record, and it'll bring up the record that we had a moment ago. And if I hover over the little pin icon, it puts the little note up there that we had there as well. So this is what I was saying earlier about the professional handling of incoming calls. Before I've even answered the call, I've got a pretty good idea of who this person is and why they may be calling me. If I answer the call, the little icons change, and I've got various other features that I have available. I can put the call on hold. I can consult with one of my colleagues. We're going to do that in a moment. Or I can just push the call straight over to one of my colleagues. So rather than actually talking to my colleague first, I can just push the call, call forward it through to one of my colleagues. What do I actually want to do in this particular case? In fact, if I just click on the window as well, you can see I've actually got a phone window as well. So I'm using what's known as the preview window here. But new users sometimes prefer to use this phone window. It's a little bit larger and therefore a little bit more obtrusive, but it does have the labels next to the icons. What you tend to find is most users prefer to use the little preview one. It doesn't splat over your screen every time your phone rings. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to close that bit off. This guy, Abbey Produce, has asked me a question and I don't know the answer. So I need to consult with one of my colleagues. So the way I can do that is I can bring up the present screen and I can actually see all of my other colleagues that are running Go Connect. I can see the status they're in, so I can see whether they're actually on the phone or not. And they've also got the ability to show me their availability. And we'll talk about availability a little bit later. But the guy I wanted to speak to actually is a guy called Ian Deacon in the sales department. But I can see he's not on the phone, but he set his availability in meeting. I'm not going to waste my time, or more importantly, my customer's time, Abbey Produce, by trying to ring Ian Deacon to get an answer from him when clearly he's not going to answer his phone. So instead of ringing Ian, I can ring Wendy, his colleague, instead. I can just consult with Wendy, and it automatically puts Abbey on hold for me, and then rings Wendy's number. And eventually that's going to answer, and when Wendy answers the phone, she's probably gone to the lure. There you go. Here we go. So Wendy has answered the phone now. What we can now do, I can talk to Wendy. I can ask her the question that Abbey have asked me, and then option I can either transfer the call over to Wendy so she can talk to Abbey if she wants to, or I can just cancel the call off. And if I do that, it then gives me Abbey back again, and I can give them the answer that Wendy gave to me. So this is what we're saying about this collaboration of users and being able to use the system to be able to see the availability of your colleagues. You don't need to understand the phone system. You don't need to know which buttons to press to call one of your colleagues. You don't need to learn the actual phone system. You just need to use the interface to be able to do that. That's quite a nice feature there. Just going to hang that call up. We talked about availability. For my system tray menu, that's where I can set it manually. There's various options that can be set now. There's a few more in 2.5. We'll talk about that a bit later. So each user of Go Connect can show their colleagues what their current availability is, and that's obviously very useful in collaboration in terms of speaking to users, in interrupting people when they're in a meeting, etc. So that's the first thing that I really wanted to show you. The second quite nice thing, actually if I bring the presence back up again, is picking up calls. So if we pick somebody, let's look at Patrick Mace as an example. I can't generate an incoming call to Patrick's number, unfortunately, but I can dial him, and that's pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to dial Patrick from here. I can see his phone is ringing, and I can just literally just right-click on his name in the present screen, and I can pick up the call. Obviously it's me picking up a call from me, but you kind of get the idea. So again, I don't need to understand the phone system to know how to pick up a colleague's call. I can just click on their name in the presence window and pick up the call from there. Let me just hang those up. Having done that, I've taken a message for Patrick. He was out of the room for a while. Rather than sticking a yellow post-it on his screen, I can just right-click on his name and I can send him a message. So there's a full message facility that you have available within GoConnect. All GoConnect users, if you enable that functionality for them, they can send and receive messages. And from your system tray menu, you have a little messaging section where you can go and see all of your previous messages. You can pick them up and you can continue the conversation, etc., etc. So again, we're back to that communication and collaboration between GoConnect users. So we've looked at kind of incoming calls and picking up calls. The other thing to show you as the sort of base functionality is obviously probably the most important thing, which is dialing and making calls. Various ways you can do that. You can actually make calls from this search screen. It may not be obvious if you've used the product that you can do that. So you can just type in a phone number and it will actually dial the number. It could be an extension or it could be an external number. You can initiate your searching from here as well. So rather than going into the address book like I did earlier and typing Abby, if I type Abby here, it'll actually do the search and take me straight into the address book, which is quite nice. Having done that search, I can then just click to dial. So I can just click that number and dial it. So you can speed up that searching and dialing functionality. We're going to look at that again a little bit later when we look at the integration side. But hopefully you can see even from that, the bullet we've had up earlier saying about speeding up outbound dialing, it's much quicker to find that contact you're looking for and very quickly dial that number rather than having to sort of manually punch in the number. I'll just cancel that call off. A few other ways that you can quickly dial. You've got every user has a recent dial list. So every user's client stores, I think it's the last 10 numbers that were dialed. So if you want to call somebody back from 5 minutes ago, you can find that number very quickly. And you've got a full call history as well that you can look at. So it shows you all of your inbound and outbound calls. It also shows you your missed calls as well, which in a sales environment is very, very important and interesting, because if that missed call was from a phone number from somebody that you know, so it is actually a known contact, it will put the contact name there for you as well, so you can actually see who it was that you missed the call from. And in the sales environment, that might determine whether you call them back today, tomorrow, or next month. So that's quite handy. If it's a number that we don't recognize because it's not yet in the address book or the shared application, it'll show itself like this. So you see the number, but it just shows the location. It will tell you what the dialing code is, but it's somebody that we don't know at the moment. What you can do with that is if you actually click on the little name, it will then bring up an empty contact record that you can then fill in. So what some people tend to do is they'll go to the end of the day and they'll go and look at the numbers that kind of dialed in during the day that they weren't familiar with, and then they go back and say, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that guy, I'm going to fill his details in now. So if he calls me again, I've got his details in the contact book. You can also do that live when you're actually doing a call as well. If it's an unknown contact, rather than it giving you the show contact icon that you can click on, it'll give you an add new contact icon. So during the conversation that you're having with that person, you can start typing in their name and their company name and their phone number, etc., and the other details. Quite useful. So lots of features there in terms of dialing. That's the kind of base functionality of the products, and that cuts through all of the different, the 3 different clients: the Office Plus, and the CRM versions. They can all do what I've just shown you, and that demo's took me something like 10 minutes. If you give that to a client, that will show them the core functionality of what GoConnect is all about. A few other bits and pieces that are a bit difficult to demonstrate, so I've just got some slides for these. Forwarded calls is quite a good one. So in your system tray menu, you have a features option, and you can set your forwarding to a particular extension. If you're the recipient of that, and in this case my colleague Wendy Rowell has set her extension to be forwarded to me, when the call hits my phone and my window pops up, I can see that it's actually a call that was originally going to Wendy and is now coming to me. So I can answer the call. It's actually an unknown caller, but I can answer the call saying, "Hi, this is Phil Driver speaking. My colleague Wendy isn't available at the moment. How can I help you?" And I can even pop the contact's record and actually then see who that contact person is. So again, professional handling of incoming calls. Got a couple of features to speed up the outbound dialing process. One of them is called focus dialing. This was added sort of 2.4-ish, and it's been around a little while, but you may not have seen it. It's a bit of a sledgehammer approach, and what it does is you can actually switch it on so that any application that you're in, any field within that application, if it has what appears to be a valid phone number, and you can set the criteria for that in terms of maximum and minimum length of number, it will then, if you click inside the field, it will then offer you the ability to dial the number contained in that field. And if there's two possible numbers, it will give you the two chances to do that. It's a bit of a sort of a sledgehammer approach, because there's no sort of targetedness in this at all. It just works across all applications that or that particular application that you're looking at. But it will kind of just switch it on, for any field that's got anything that looks vaguely like a phone number. And it does work in certain situations, but it's not the most appropriate one. If you have a client that has an application that they very specifically want to do dialing from, okay, and this isn't talking about the integration side of things. We're going to look at that a little bit later when we actually identify clients, etc., incoming callers. This is purely the ability to add dialing into an application. And there's a very easy way of actually doing this. I've got an example here with ACT, but let me do a live example of something else. So if I go into my configuration for my client, we'll be looking at this configuration a little bit later. In the dialing section, where you can turn on some of the different functionality, I'm going to switch on my application dialing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new application that I want to do dialing from. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to use an Outlook contact. Okay, this could be any application. Okay, as long as it's got a field that's got a phone number in it, this is how it works. You select the most appropriate choice. So is it an application that runs in a browser, for example? Generally, if it's a Windowsy application, I pick any other type of standard application. That usually kind of does the job. So click Next. Now what you do, just covering over, what you do next is you grab this little target and you drag it over the top of the phone number field that you want to put the dialing into. If you keep your eye on the left-hand screen here as I drag over, you'll see that it actually, as I hover around the right-hand side, it's recognizing the individual fields, etc. If I just drop it inside the phone number field, you can see the little green tick on the left-hand box. It's got the phone number. It's recognized that. So I just drop it and I click Add. Next, better, close, and click Add and save it. All right, what that's actually done, it's updated my client. So when I'm ever in this application anymore, if I click inside the phone number field, it automatically gives me the ability to dial. If I dial the number, it'll dial the number. So that could be any application that your client may have. If they just want to put click to dialing into their application, that's how simple it is. It takes less than a minute to actually do that. Let's just hang that up and put Jose away for a while. So that's what's known as in-application dialing. You might find the customers quite interested in that functionality. We've got a similar feature called web page dialing that you can switch on or off. Each individual user can turn it on or off if they want to, and it turns phone numbers into hyperlinks, and you can just click on the number and it'll dial that number. So if you have a customer that does a lot of web-based research, for example, and then phones numbers as a result of looking at something on a web page, they might find that that feature quite useful. All of those features are switched on in this dialing section of the configuration. So I'll just bring that back up again. So I had application dialing and clipboard dialing switched on. I can turn my web page dialing on. I can turn my focus dialing on. And down below you can specify, above the defaults, you can specify minimum, maximum length. You can even say the start digit. And that's the criteria that GoConnect uses to determine whether the number could be a phone number. Normally you say something like minimum length of 9, maximum of 15, and a start digit of 0. Something like that for the UK. Something else you can do at a higher level, and it's quite important that your customers understand this, is that all of the features that I've shown you, the sort of different features within the product, can be turned on or off for individual clients, or more particularly groups of clients or groups of users. So for example, you may have a group of users that you want to be able to access the address book, but you don't want them messing around with the contents of the address book. So you don't want them editing client contacts or adding new contacts. So it might be a certain group of users, in this case we've picked reception, where they can only access the address book read-only. What you do is you create what's known as a security policy on the GoConnect server. You tick the things you want the people to be able to do and untick the things you don't want them to be able to do. Give it a name, and then on the user criteria, when you set users up on the server, you can say what policy they belong to, what security policy they belong to. So you put your reception users into the reception security policy, and they only have then this functionality. So you can see the kind of things you can turn on or off. You can stop people picking up calls. You can stop them seeing the presence. You can stop them setting their availability, etc., etc. Lots of things that you can play around with there to tailor it dependent on the individual types of users. While we're on the subject of users, just a quick mention of something that was added fairly late in version 2.4 that you may have missed if you haven't seen the product for a while, is Active Directory integration. You can manually create users, GoConnect users. You can have the client automatically create them, so when somebody installs a client on their PC and starts that client up, it can automatically create a user account for them based on their Windows username and password. So that's a couple of ways that you can create user accounts. Another way is using Active Directory integration, which essentially, if the customer has Active Directory in place, which they probably have, then we can get user information, we can get details of users from that Active Directory and create GoConnect user accounts from that information. And if they've got things like their phone numbers and their department name defined in Active Directory, we can pull that information from there as well. So bear that one in mind in terms of talking to your customers. If it's a large customer and they want to roll out across a large number of their users, a quick way of creating those user accounts is with the Active Directory integration. Let's get on. You've been very patient if you're familiar with the product already. Let's get on to some new things in 2.5 that work on the client side. The first one is the positioning of the preview window. If you've been using the product for a while, let me just get a call going. You're probably familiar with the fact that the preview window has always been routed to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. What you can do now in version 2.5 is you can drag the preview window anywhere on your screen, and what it'll then do, you've got 4 quadrants, what it'll then do is it will reappear. So if I close it and bring it back up again, it'll reappear in the far extreme of the quadrant that you dropped it into. So it'll always be top left, top right, bottom right, but you can just basically just drag it to somewhere within that quadrant, and roughly within the quadrant, close it down, bring it back up again, and it goes up to where you want it to be. We've had user requests that just didn't want it to be routed in the bottom right hand corner, so it can now go in any one of those 4 corners, which is quite nice. We've also changed the present screen. We had some requests for this one in terms of docking it. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate this because it only works on Windows 8 systems, but essentially what we're saying here, let me just peel my call off. Essentially what we're saying here is the present screen, you can kind of shape it up a little bit, so you can, it gets a bit upset on GoToMeeting, unfortunately, and leaves a bit of a drag there. That looks awful. Hang on a minute, let me just reset the screen. There we go. So you can basically size your screen up to a certain size. When you maximize it, what it will then do, rather than maximize it, what it actually does is it then throws it over to the right-hand side, routes it to the right-hand side, docks it to the right-hand side, and then everything else on your screen then sits neatly on the left-hand side. So you can keep your present screen permanently docked on your on your computer screen. So that might be useful for certain users. It might be irritating for others, but it might be useful for certain users. So that's only Windows version 8 systems that works on. A few other little bits and pieces we put in the address book. So just bring an address book up. What you've now got, if we go into contact, if you're familiar with the product, this will make sense to you. In fact, actually, we saw it earlier on the live demonstration. When we have a live call going, so we need to get a call going as well. Okay, so when we've got a live call going, you saw that I could consult with one of my colleagues in the present screen. You can now consult with external colleagues through the address book. So you've got a call connected, you can then actually dial and consult with external contacts as well as internal contacts in the present screen. So that's quite nice. And we've also added emailing into the present screen. So again, just hang up my call, bring the presence up. So in the present screen now, you've got an email facility. Be careful with this one. So if I want to email my colleague Wendy Rowell, it's grayed out. The reason is because in Wendy's user definition on the server, so I'm actually on the site, on the server side of things at the moment, find Wendy. If we look in her definition, there's no email address in there. So by nature, we need an email address in there to be able to email people. And basically what it does is it fires up an Outlook, a new email, and puts the recipient's email address in the email box, in the to box. That's quite nice. And one of the big changes is the change to the presence window. So if we bring our presence window up once again. So at the moment I've been looking at this particular view, but we've introduced a new view called the combined view. So you access it from here at the top, and you say view and combined. And what this now shows you is a view of both extensions and of users as well. Now users are the square icons, and extensions are the round icons. Now they may have a name next to them, the extension, because on the server setup side you can actually put name labels against extensions. They could have a name against them, but it's actually the square icons are the real people. If I just close this one off for a moment, if you have a user that has more than one device associated with them, and in my particular case on my demo I've got my desk phone, my real phone, I've got a soft phone installed on my laptop, and I've also got my mobile side of things set up as well. So I've got a virtual device or virtual extension that's twin to GoConnect running on my mobile. Then if I open up the little plus, you can see my 3 devices that I've got actually set up here. So you can actually see how that works. As a user, what I then have is a feature now called preferred device. So in my system tray menu, in my preferred device, I can then say which device I want to make calls on and which device I want to receive calls on through GoConnect. If I change that to my Mobex, you'll see it's actually updated the present screen now, and it shows that 504 is my preferred device. If someone now rings me through GoConnect, I'll receive that call on my mobile. If I make a call out, if I dial out like I was doing earlier on my demo, even though I'm doing it on my laptop, the call will actually go out through my mobile, through my GoConnect mobile. And the reason that's quite a nice feature is you can literally switch your preferred device depending on what you're up to. If you're in a meeting, you're away from your desk on a different floor completely, you might want to switch your incoming calls to your mobile rather than to your desk phone. So if someone rings your desk phone, it'll automatically switch it through to your mobile. That's quite a powerful and a fairly useful feature there. So that's the combined view that you'll see when you open up the preview now. And that's a slide just explaining how the multi-device side of things works. And that's another slide showing you how to do your preferred device. All good stuff. One thing to mention though is, regardless of what you've got your preferred device set as, so you may have it set as your mobile, GoConnect will still display that nice preview window on your computer. So you might be away somewhere with your preferred device set to your mobile in a meeting. It will still put the preview window up on your computer screen as well, so that you can see that a call is actually coming. Or you may actually be sitting still at your desk and you've got your calls coming through to your mobile, but you might have your mobile on silent, for example. It'll still show you the preview window coming up on the screen as well. Tied in with this, we've done a lot of work with availability now. This is where we're heading with the product in terms of its functionality. First thing, if you're familiar with the product, you would have spotted keenly earlier on that we've increased the range of selections that you can have when you manually set your availability. So you can show people, whether you're in a meeting, working away, on a break, for example. So you can set those all manually, and they will display in the preview, the presence window that we saw earlier, so your colleagues can see, what you're up to, what your availability status is. We've also created a new auto sense capability. 3 new states from that. We've got one called online meeting. And what that means is, if you're as you are right now, in a GoToMeeting webinar, or maybe on a TeamViewer meeting, or a Link call, or WebEx, or even Skype, it will sense that automatically if you switch this functionality on, and it will automatically change your availability status to being in an online meeting. So you don't have to remember to do that manually. There's another new feature that you can switch on that says when you're away from your desk. So when your computer goes into unused status for an X number of minutes, it will automatically then set your availability to say that you're away from your desk. And you can also pick up the outside working hours. So it looks in your Outlook calendar, works out what your in working hours are, and automatically then switches you to outside normal working hours outside of those hours. So you can kind of switch all that functionality on or off within your particular client. If we go into the configurator and on availability, on activities, get it right, they've moved things around a little bit. There's various things that you can switch on here. So you can set your away, how long to wait until it sets you being away from your desk. If you lock your computer, you can set it as being a particular status, and you can switch on the detecting the meeting software. I've got it switched on at the moment because it messes with it when I'm doing webinars. but you can switch that on as well. So each individual client can play around with that as they wish to. So that's the auto sense capability. We also still have the ability to look into the user's Outlook calendar if they want us to do that, and we can work out from their appointments what kind of status to display, and we kind of map things based on these are the Outlook settings, and we can pick those up and display those as GoConnect settings in the usual way. It's an appropriate point to mention, though, the Exchange calendar integration that we introduced in version 2.4. This previous feature requires the user's PC to be switched on and their client to be active and talking to the GoConnect server. That's a bit difficult if they're out of the office. Okay, so the functionality was only really working if the client or the user was actually in the office, which kind of defeats the object of being not at work or working away. With the Exchange calendar integration, we talk directly to the Exchange server, and we can get the information about that user's appointments without needing that user's PC to actually be switched on and communicating with the GoConnect server. So that's another sort of extra functionality your clients may be interested in. Having shown you all of that, what we've then introduced is a thing called availability-based actions, and this is where the power of this stuff starts to come through. What you can do with this is when you enter an availability state or when you exit an availability state, you can set certain things to have happen. Okay, so for example, I think I've got a next slide here. Yeah, let me show you it really. That's probably a better way of doing it. So on the configurator, in the availability side of things, what you have here, this is a list of all the current possible availability states. So for example, online meeting might be one of them. What you can do is you can say, well, okay, when I enter online meeting state, and that's already going to be automatically sensed, I haven't got to do that manually, but when I enter that state, I want this thing to happen, and I can add a functionality in, and I can say, well, actually I want I want to forward my phone, I want to set myself to do not disturb, I want to send a message, I want to forward it to, etc. So you can control what it is you want to have happen, generally involved around sort of either forwarding calls or changing, putting things into DND and that kind of thing. So essentially what GoConnect could really do is automatically sense when you go in an online meeting, automatically put you in DND, and then when your meeting is completed, it'll automatically take you out of DND and put you back to normal calls, etc. So you can kind of see that the power and the flexibility of that. They're called availability-based actions. We've also introduced functionality or integration into Quando Busy Light. If you've not seen the product before, it's the picture kind of paints 1,000 words. Little device that sits on top of your screen that shows whether you want to talk to your colleagues or whether you're in a particularly bad mood. You can find information about that on busylight.com. Essentially, all we're doing is we're reflecting the availability state. We're reflecting those as the coloured lights on the Quando Busy Light. So if you've got any customers that are using Busy Light, they might be interested in that. One final feature to mention just on the PC client is the online help. If we go into the configurator for one last time, if I click on a particular screen, so I'm looking at the interface screen, for example, if I click the little question mark, it'll automatically fire up my browser and take me to the online help system. So we're kind of doing away with the old PDF manuals. We've put all of the same content now online. You can go through all the other pages if you want to, but it's context sensitive, so wherever you click that question mark, it'll take you to the appropriate page in the online help, and all the information that was in the manuals or in the PDF manuals is now on the online screen. It makes it easier for us to maintain that help information, and hopefully easier for the client to find the information that they're looking for. Okay, so that's the PC client kind of done and dusted, and all the new features in 2.5 relating to that. Quick few mentions on some of the other clients. The Mac client hasn't really changed since 2.4, so similar features to the PC client. Most of the things I've shown you this morning work on the Mac client as well. Not so much on the integration side. There's not so much to integrate to on the Mac side, so really only the Enterprise edition of Salesforce and also the Apple address book as well. There is a web page on the website that gives you a comparison between the Mac and the PC client. On the mobile side, again, not enough time to really go into this in too much detail today, but just a reminder, in case you haven't seen this for a while, there's 3 versions now for Android, iOS, and Windows Phone. We call the iOS and Windows Phone Unified Communicator, and the Android version is called GoConnect Mobile, although from a licensing point of view, We call it all sort of mobile, GoConnect Mobile. And essentially what you have is an app that's free to download. It's just the licensing to actually use the app that costs the money. It gives you a presence screen, just like we saw earlier on the PC client, so you can do all the kind of things that you would be able to do. You can see user status, etc. on there. You can set your own availability from here as well. Quite handy for sort of mobile sales people that might be out of the office, but they can actually switch themselves between meeting and available. So they may be out of the office, but they might be in between meetings, so they can set themselves sort of temporarily available to receive calls and then switch themselves back into meeting. You can block calls and reroute calls for your mobile. You've got the messaging, so the messaging that we looked at earlier, the chat facility, that's all there on the mobile side. You can dial Office extensions with Deezer or Auto Attendant correctly set up, so you can directly dial the Office extensions from your mobile device. Another really powerful feature is that the address book is available to you from the mobile, so you don't need to put all of the individual contacts on your mobile phone or on your SIM because you already have access to the shared address book. And if you get a call coming in through the Twinned extension, it will actually show you that same caller ID that you had on the preview screen when we started the original demonstration, which is quite good. You can also dial through the Office extension, through the PBX as well, using dial through, which means you can be reducing potentially calling costs by making those calls through the PBX rather than through the the phone's dialer. And as I briefly mentioned, on the inbound calls, you get the little preview showing you who it is who's actually calling you, which is quite nice. It does actually show you the original call ID, so even though the call's being routed through the phone system, it doesn't show you as a call coming in from the phone system. So even when you're getting missed calls, you've been in a meeting for an hour, you come out of your meeting, you better see who it is who called you still, which is quite good. Say the iOS and Windows versions are called Unified Communicator, and they work pretty much the same way. There's a few sort of differences between the different versions of the different platforms, but again, there's a feature comparison on the website that shows you the functionality between the three different mobile apps. And the other client I need to mention is the Attendant Console. Again, not enough time to go through this in great detail, but essentially what an Attendant Console is, in fact, I'll just show you the screen. This is their interface. They have all the same functionality that the usual client has. They've got the contacts, they've got the history, they've got the messaging, all that kind of works, but they've got a different interface. The idea is this person is somebody that does take a lot of inbound calls, or maybe doing a lot of sort of switching calls and looking at other users' extensions, etc. So on the left hand side you can see the incoming calls that the operator has coming through, and they can monitor not just their own extension but other users' extensions as well, so they can answer calls on behalf of other people, like a boss secretary kind of functionality. This is the attached call, this is the call they're currently on at the moment, and then they can see all of the other extensions on the phone system. They can filter those out and look at particular extensions, etc. So it's a UI that's designed specifically for somebody that's job is primarily to sort of answer calls in an operator kind of functionality. What's new in 2.5 in that client is we've added what do we call it? Dialed number scripting. So the idea of this is that if you're in an environment where you're answering different sort of incoming numbers to DDIs, DIDs, in a call center kind of environment, you can put scripting on there so you can sort of answer the call appropriately in the company name rather than seeing it just as a DDI or a DID number that the call was coming in on. Let's get into application integration. This is probably the most powerful part of GoConnect in terms of showing this to particular clients. What I'm going to do is go back to our configurator that we had a little bit earlier, and let's just go into so I think I've still got it switched on. Where were we? Dialing. Okay, so if you remember earlier when we had that little dialing demonstration with our friend Jose, that was purely putting a dial icon next to a phone number. If you want the full sort of Monty, if you like, where when somebody calls you, it'll do a lookup of their phone number, offer you the chance to then click on a little icon, which then takes you to that contact record in a particular application. Now, I'm a bit limited what I can show you on my laptop, but in full flow, you're going to get something along these kind of lines where it can actually be integrated into your shared address book. It could be looking in Outlook. It could even be looking in Sage Act. Just to show you how quick this is to actually set up, we're going to use our friend Jose again, and we're going to set this up just for Outlook. So I've gone into the integration section, I've clicked on Add New, And here I am presented with a list of all of the applications that we currently support for this full-blown integration. The user requires the CRM licensing in place to be able to do this. It's not available in the base version of the product. You can see all the different choices. I'm going to be cheeky and just pick the Outlook one because this one works very quickly. Essentially what happens is whatever you pick at the top here, it'll then display an additional dialog down below where it needs information to get this integration to take place. Generally that information is things like server addresses, usernames and passwords of the account administrator, that kind of thing. The kind of information that we need to be able to connect to that application and connect to that application server. In the case of Outlook, it's actually very simple because you leave everything as a default. You can set these things if you want to, but if you just leave everything as a default, it works quite well. Once you've answered the questions, you can test if you've actually got the integration working by simply putting in a real number that you know is in the application. So if we put in Jose's number, that's not his real number, by the way, click search, and we know it's worked because it's actually gone into the application that we've set up above and it's found that particular contact. And if we really, really want to know, then we click on Show Contact and it'll show that information. So having done that, right, we click on Save and it's updated our clients. We go back into the configuration again. You can see now we've got Outlook has actually set up. It's all been nicely set up. So that's now fully configured. The consequence of that is twofold. First of all, when we then receive a number, or a call from that number, it will correctly identify the user. It's actually found their profile photo in there as well. So that's the incoming integration working fine. If I click on the Show Contact, in fact, no, let me come back to that in a moment. Let me just leave that sitting there for a moment. If I go into the address book, and if I do a search on Jose now, what it's going to do, I've actually got two Outlooks running, so ignore that one. So it's found Jose, a match with Jose in the shared address book, and also found them in Outlook as well. So when you're doing your searching, it'll search through all of your integrated applications. When you've got that incoming call, you've got two Show Contact icons. You've got the Show Contact, which will show you the address book contact, and you've got the little Outlook icon, and depending which applications you integrate, there's a little icon for each one of those applications. Click on that one, and it'll bring up the appropriate contact record that it's actually found. See the power of that in terms of getting that to actually work and how quick that was to actually do that. It takes a bit longer for some of the other applications, a few more questions to answer, but essentially it's pretty much the same functionality there. So in full flow, you can see I've, in my, get rid of Jose, in full flow you can see I've put a search in for Huffman and it's found the guy in 3 different places, and I can click to dial any one of those and dial the number. That's the integration. That's what you need the CRM licensing for if you want that kind of integration rather than just the basic click to dial that we looked at earlier. So lots of products that we can integrate into. Check out the integration page of the website. That will give you the list of the current applications and the current versions as well. We keep that fully up to date so you can see which versions are actually required. You may have a customer that may use an application that's an industry-specific application, something that nobody's heard of outside of that industry, but is very well known in the education sector or the construction sector, for example. And we have a whole bunch of applications that we've come across in the past that we've created the same kind of integration into. So previously somebody has asked us to integrate into those applications. The by industry page on the website gives you a list of those applications. So go in and check that, and your customer's application may be there already. If it's not, and we've never heard of it before, we have an online application integration request process, an AIRP, which formalizes the process of you asking us to contact that application's vendor to find out if we can actually integrate with them and what's required in order to do that. So to manage that process of our our customers coming to us and asking us to integrate, we've got this online process that allows us to manage that. Usually we can integrate into applications. It's not technically difficult to do that. It's only if the application vendor just isn't interested or doesn't respond to our contact that it makes it very difficult for us to be able to do that integration. Should also mention that the CRM version of the product also has integration into social networking, so Facebook, LinkedIn, and MySpace. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're getting an incoming phone number. We look up that phone number. If we find a match for it, if that contact record has an email address in it, then we'll hunt around the the user's profile or the user's member list to find the match in Facebook, LinkedIn, or MySpace. There are subtle differences between the three in terms of where we look, but essentially we're looking for a match for that particular caller. And if we find it, as you saw with Jose earlier, we'll put a little profile photo up, and you can then click on the Facebook icon to bring up the user's Facebook profile. Quite handy in things like human resources, recruitment, that kind of area, where you get an incoming call from somebody, you want to quickly pop their Facebook profile. Just closing off the subject of integration, there's another feature that has been around for a while, but it's quite a useful one. It's easier to demonstrate this in the configurator. In call events, you can do various things. You can set certain actions based on what you want to have happen on certain actions. So when a call is ringing, you can say which of the interfaces you want to be displayed, or whether you want to immediately show a contact. But sort of hidden further down below, you can add in integration into a user's program, and by integration I mean just calling that program, or maybe going to a particular web page. So you click on the add, and you can say, well, okay, on ringing calls, on incoming calls only, and only external incoming calls. So that's the criteria that you're setting. When that happens, I want to run a program. So you can just browse and find the location of the exe file or the executable that you want to execute, and it'll just start that program up. You can pass parameters through to that program if you want to, including things like the phone number. So you could then run the program that then sort of finds the particular contact record maybe. Or you can put in a web address. So you can say, whenever this happens, automatically fire up my browser and take me to that web page. And potentially, again, you can pass in parameters through to that web page as well if it was set up to accept them. So that's quite a sort of front-end integration into something that the customer wants to have brought on screen when this thing happens within GoConnect. That's quite a nice feature. And just to close off, we've also got the first-party TAPI client as well. So if you have a customer that's running a TAPI compliant application, and they want to have sort of the dialing capabilities enabled within that application, then we provide a separate first-party TAPI client. It's not the client that I demonstrated earlier. It doesn't have a user interface in any way, but it sits on the same PC as the TAPI client that's running on that particular user's PC. So on this user's PC, there will be the client for the TAPI application, talking presumably to the actual application itself. On that same PC is our first-party DLL client, which can then enable the functionality of the dialing functionality by running that through the GoConnect server, which is connected to the phone system. So it's a separate kind of client specifically for enabling TAPI dialing within a particular application. Changing tack completely now. If you have a customer, generally when we're talking about GoConnect, we're assuming you have a customer that has one building, one phone system, and a bunch of users wanting to use that phone system, which is probably maybe 9 out of 10 cases. But you may have a customer that has multiple buildings, multiple offices. They might be in the same city, or they might be in different counties, or could even be in different countries. We've got a couple of options in terms of how the users might want to use GoConnect. We've got one that's called GoSite, and the idea of that is that you can have up to 10 different Panasonic phone systems all accessing the same GoConnect server. So I've got a simplified diagram that just has the 2 sites. So in this particular scenario, at site number 1, we have a phone system, we've got some users, and we've got a GoConnect server. The client could, if they wanted to, at site 2, where they've got another phone system, they could install another GoConnect server if they wanted to, and the 2 sites could be completely autonomous. Okay, and that may be exactly what they want. They don't want any kind of connection between the 2 sites. However, if it's a user community and they do want some connection, what they could do is they could then have the second phone system tapped into the GoConnect server at site number 1, and they basically just require GoSite licensing for that additional server, and they can have up to 9 more of those tapped into the same GoConnect server at site number 1. The benefit of this is that this user community at site 2 now has the presence, the chat, the shared address book, the same facilities as site 1. So they're sharing the same address book. They can chat with users at site 1. They can see the presence screen, and they can see all GoConnect users across both sites. So that may be something that your client might be interested in. The danger of this, or the downside of this, is that it requires connectivity between the phone system at Site 2 and the GoConnect server at Site 1. If the system goes down, if the connectivity between the two sites go down, these users can still use their phones, they can still manually pick up their phones and dial people, but they will lose all GoConnect functionality for the duration that the connection is down, because they can't talk to the GoConnect server. So they'll lose all of their traditional capability that they have. An alternative is federation. So this is the other alternative that they can use, which is to do what I mentioned earlier, which is to have a second GoConnect server installed at the second site talking to the phone system that's local, but have the two GoConnect servers communicate with each other. The benefit of this is that they still get the shared presence. They can still message each other as well. They don't get a shared address book, unfortunately, because address books are unique to each individual server, but they get all of the other functionality shared. If the connection goes down, it's not quite so severe, because they're still connected to their phone system, but they're also still connected to their local GoConnect server, and therefore all of their GoConnect functionality will continue to work, except anything that requires them to also see the presence of the other users. But all the basic functionality, the dialing, etc., the integration, that all still works perfectly fine. So the decision between Federation and GoConnect and GoSite tends to be, how good is the link between the various sites. We get a lot of questions on link these days, so we're just throwing a slide in at the end of the presentation just to talk about link. To clarify what we have here, a couple of things have changed. New in version 2.5, you wouldn't have been aware of this already. All users that use Link 2013 or Office 365 versions of Link, and if they're running the GoConnect client on the same PC as where the Link client is running, then we will automatically now put a call using desk phone option in the user's Link client. So that allows them to dial the particular customer, or dial a particular number, going out through from the Link client, but going out through the GoConnect client. So that's automatically enabled. If the two clients are sitting on the same PC, it's automatically enabled, and it's not something you switch on in the configuration. And it doesn't require any kind of gateway or anything like that. It just works automatically. So that's new in 2.5. In 2.4, we introduced the update link statement on a call. That's still available now, but it's something that you switch on in the configurator. You just tick the little box. And what that does is, if the user's handset is either in use or in DND, then in the Link side of things, it will automatically display in the user's Link client that they're in a call or that they're in DND. So it displays to their colleagues their current status, but that's all been done in Link rather than talking about the presence that we have on the GoConnect side. So that's a feature, and both of those features are available in the bog standard Office client. Okay. On top of that, so this is how it actually works in reality. Is you've got a Link client on the user's PC, you've got a GoConnect client. The Link client's talking to the Link server, but the ability to do the dialing out that we mentioned earlier from the Link client is handled through the GoConnect client, which talks to the GoConnect server, which talks to the phone system. So that's all standard stuff. That's nothing to do with a gateway or anything like that. That's just having the GoConnect client installed on the same PC as the Link client. And all you can do with that is you can dial numbers, and you can dial out through the Link client. If your customer has its users, and those users want to be able to do full call control from their Link client, so things like making calls, receiving calls, forwarding, transferring, then in order to get that to work, you then need to specify the RCC gateway, okay, the Link gateway. And that then enables that Link client functionality by sitting between the Link server and the phone system. You see there's no GoConnect client running on here anymore. Everything goes through the RCC gateway. So it kind of depends what your customer wants in terms of Link functionality and dialing. Do they want to do everything in Link and they don't want to see anything to do with GoConnect, or do they want to use GoConnect functionality and do everything through GoConnect? So that's the kind of decision to make on those two. That's pretty much it. Bang on time on the hour. Quick summary of benefits. Hopefully through that you've seen some of the benefits in terms of, I'm not going to go through them all again, but hopefully you've seen what I claimed at the beginning in terms of improving the call handling of incoming calls, speeding up the outbound calling. If you've got a customer that does 10,000 outbound calls a month or a week, you can see how that could be speeded up quite significantly. The the big one for me really is this second bullet down below, the leveraging the investment in CRMs. We see clients spending tens and sometimes hundreds of £1,000s on a CRM, but they've still got their users manually putting in a search to find the person they want to dial, and then picking up a handset and manually punching in the number, and wasting 20 seconds per call to do that. Whereas for a fairly small investment, you can actually get that process speeded up quite significantly with GoConnect. So that's the kind of benefit side of things. A couple of other points that may not be obvious. The Office client is the base version, or the entry point. That was the one that I pretty much demonstrated today when I did the original demonstration, not the integration, but the original demonstration, including the click to dial. So essentially what we're saying here is that it's a pretty low price point, the Office client. If you're sitting on the pre-sales presentation tomorrow morning, we're doing a pre-sales at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning where we talk about the licensing of the product, you'll see from that it's pretty low price. What you can do then is, with new phone systems, specify a handful of Office clients so you can get your customer looking at GoConnect relatively cheaply, get them interested in the product, and then you can start talking about mobile and attendant and the integration side of things. So use that as kind of a sales driver or a loss leader, if you like. Another important point is that for small customers, the GoConnect server will happily sit on an existing shared server. So while in larger environments it's probably advisable to have it on its own dedicated server for performance reasons, it will quite happily sit on a shared server if you've got less than 50 users, for example. So your customer would not have to invest in additional hardware to get GoConnect in and running. They've already got a phone system, their users have already got PCs or desktops or mobiles. There's no cost to hardware in that respect, and there's possibly no cost to hardware in terms of actually the server itself in that situation. We talk about software assurance in the pre-sales tomorrow, but just a quick word on it here. It's our support and subscription program for technical support and for major and minor upgrades. So users that weren't in software assurance, for example, wouldn't be able to upgrade from 2.4 to 2.5. There would be additional sort of upgrade fees appropriate for that. We talk about software assurance tomorrow. And then just a final word on the online portals that we have available. We have the main website. I think I've got it here somewhere. Here we go. The main GoConnect website. So I've mentioned a few places here already where we've got things like the, what's available in the integration side of things. Which are the products that we actually integrate with. There is the attendant and the mobile and the home. Shows you all the different versions, different Office versions, etc., etc. So all the sort of basic sales and product information is available on there. There's also a contact us, so if you need our contact details, then there's all the contact numbers and email addresses in there. So that's one website. We then have the resellers website /accreditation, but that requires a login and a password. So if you don't have that already, you need to contact us to get an account set up to be able to access that reseller website. And in there you'll find things like this presentation. We've recorded this presentation, we recorded various other ones as well, so there's various videos and things on there as well, some training slides, the full price lists, it's all in there. So if you are a reseller, you do need access to that particular sub website. And there's also a select partner program that we run. We talk about that in the pre-sales tomorrow as well. So there's an additional website for the UK and EU for select partners. And as I say, we talk about the benefits to being a select partner. It's actually free. There's various benefits to becoming a select partner. So we'll talk about that in the pre-sales tomorrow. If you've got time to come on to tomorrow. It's a shorter presentation tomorrow, only about 3/4 of an hour, I think, tomorrow. So there's the sort of contact points, sales at GoConnect CRM, support at GoConnectCRM.com. There's the two sort of contact points for us. Obviously, if you want to purchase, you need to talk to your local distributor. If you don't have one, then you contact Mondigo directly. So thanks for your time, just over the hour, as I promised. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to leave the webinar open just for, it says 10:04 on my clock on my computer, you can see down below. So I'll leave it open until 10 minutes past 11. If you've got any questions that you want to ask, just pop them in the questions section. And then when we close the webinar down, we'll be able to see your questions. And then I or a colleague will then answer those questions for you by return of email. If you stay on the webinar until 10 past, I just close the webinar down. It will just boot you out automatically. So you can either leave now or you'll get kicked out when I shut it down at 10 past. So thanks for your time. Hopefully that's given you a good bit of background on the product and the changes we put into 2.5. So I'll leave you to get out there and convince your customers of the benefits of GoConnect. Thanks again for your time.